therefrom mingle with the operations of our understanding, even as the waters of the infinite ocean send their waves to break among the pebbles that lie upon our shores. Quote, "Here begins the sea that ends not till the world's end. Where we stand, could we know the next high sea mark set beyond these waves that gleam, we should know what never man hath known, nor eye of man hath scanned. Ah, but here the man's heart leaps, yearning towards the gloom with venturous glee, from the shore that hath no shore beyond it, set in all the sea." Close quote. That doctrine, for example, that eternity is timeless, that our immortality, if we live in the eternal, is not so much future as already now and here, which we find so often expressed today in certain philosophic circles, finds its support in a "here, here," or an "amen," which floats up from that mysteriously deeper level. We recognize the passwords to the mystical region as we hear them, but we cannot use them ourselves. It alone has the keeping of the password primeval. I have now sketched with extreme brevity and insufficiency, but as fairly as I am able in the time allowed, the general traits of the mystic range of consciousness. It is, on the whole, pantheistic and optimistic, or at least the opposite of pessimistic. It is anti-naturalistic, and harmonizes best with twice-bornness and so-called otherworldly states of mind. My next task is to inquire whether we can invoke it as authoritative. Does it furnish any warrant for the truth of the twice-bornness and supernaturality and pantheism which it favors? I must give my answer to this question as concisely as I can. In brief, my answer is this, and I will divide it into 3 parts. 1. Mystical states, when well developed, usually are, and have the right to be, absolutely authoritative over the individuals to whom they come. 2. No authority emanates from them which should make it a duty for those who stand outside of them to accept their revelations uncritically. 3. They break down the authority of the non-mystical or rationalistic consciousness based upon the understanding and the senses alone. They show it to be only one kind of consciousness. They open out the possibility of other orders of truth in which, so far as anything in us vitally responds to them, we may freely continue to have faith. I will take up these points one by one. 1. As a matter of psychological fact, mystical states of a well-pronounced and emphatic sort are usually authoritative over those who have them. Footnote: I abstract from weaker states, and from those cases of which the books are full, where the director, but usually not the subject, remains in doubt whether the experience may not have proceeded from the demon. End footnote. They have been there and know. It is vain for rationalism to grumble about this. If the mystical truth that comes to a man proves to be a force that he can live by, what mandate have we of the majority to order him to live in another way? We can throw him into a prison or a madhouse, but we cannot change his mind. We commonly attach it only the more stubbornly to its beliefs. Footnote. Example: Mr. John Nelson writes of his imprisonment for preaching Methodism. Quote, "My soul was as a watered garden, and I could sing praise to God all day long, for he turned my captivity into joy, and gave me to rest as well on the boards as if I had been on a bed of down. Now could I say, God's service is a perfect freedom, and I was carried out much in prayer that my enemies might drink of the same river of peace which my God gave so largely to me." Close quote. End footnote. It mocks our utmost efforts, as a matter of fact, and in point of logic it absolutely escapes our jurisdiction. Our own more rational beliefs are based on evidence exactly similar in nature to that which mystics quote for theirs. Our senses, namely, have assured us of certain states of fact, but mystical experiences are as direct perceptions of fact for those who have them as any sensations ever were for us. The records show that even though the five senses be in abeyance in them, they are absolutely sensational in their epistemological quality, if I may be pardoned the barbarous expression. That is, they are face-to-face presentations of what seems immediately to exist. The mystic is, in short, invulnerable, and must be left, whether we relish it or not, in undisturbed enjoyment of his creed. Faith, says Tolstoy, is that by which men live, and faith state and mystic state are practically convertible terms. 2. But I now proceed to add that mystics have no right to claim that we ought to accept the deliverance of their peculiar experiences, if we are ourselves outsiders, and feel no private call thereto. The utmost they can ever ask of us in this life is to admit that they establish a presumption. They form a consensus, and have an unequivocal outcome. And it would be odd, mystics might say, if such a unanimous type of experience should prove to be altogether wrong. At bottom, however, this would only be an appeal to numbers, like the appeal of rationalism the other way, and the appeal to numbers has no logical force. If we acknowledge it, it is for suggestive, not for logical reasons. We follow the majority because to do so suits our life. But even this presumption from the unanimity of mystics is far from being strong. In characterizing mystic states as pantheistic, optimistic, etc., I am afraid I oversimplified the truth. I did so for expository reasons, and to keep the closer to the classic mystical tradition. The classic religious mysticism, it now must be confessed, is only a privileged case. It is an extract, kept true to type by the selection of the fittest specimens and their preservation in schools. It is carved out from a much larger mass, and if we take the larger mass as seriously as religious mysticism has historically taken itself, we find that the supposed unanimity largely disappears. To begin with, even religious mysticism itself, the kind that accumulates traditions and makes schools, is much less unanimous than I have allowed. It has been both ascetic and antinomianly self-indulgent within the Christian Church. It is dualistic in Sankhya and monistic in Vedanta philosophy. I called it pantheistic, but the great Spanish mystics are anything but pantheists. They are, with few exceptions, non-metaphysical minds, for whom the category of personality is absolute. The union of man with God is for them much more like an occasional miracle than like an original identity. How different again, apart from the happiness common to all, is the mysticism of Walt Whitman, Edward Carpenter, Richard Jefferies, and other naturalistic pantheists, from the more distinctively Christian sort. The fact is that the mystical feeling of enlargement, union, and emancipation has no specific intellectual content whatever of its own. It is capable of forming matrimonial alliances with material furnished by the most diverse philosophies and theologies, provided only they can find a place in their framework for its peculiar emotional mood. We have no right, therefore, to invoke its prestige as distinctively in favor of any special belief, such as that in absolute idealism, or in the absolute monistic identity, or in the absolute goodness of the world. It is only relatively in favor of all these things. It passes out of common human consciousness in the direction in which they lie. So much for religious mysticism proper. But more remains to be told, for religious mysticism is only one half of mysticism. The other half has no accumulated traditions except those which the textbooks on insanity supply. Open any one of these, and you will find abundant cases in which